What's going on, family? I'm Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. This is our third conversation related to the round robin of Black Murdersrow. And in prior videos, we talked about how often black fighters fought one another. And what's so interesting, if you look at today's standards, some of the fighters today, such as Terrence Crawford, and Errol Spence, Jamel and Jamar Charlo, Demetrius Andres, and some of the young men who are coming up, Boots Ennis. When you look at the first wave of Black Murdersrow, Sam Langford, Harry Wells, Joe Jeanette, and Sam McVeigh, and Jack Johnson before he became heavyweight champion in 1908. When you look at the lower tiers of the first wave of Black Murdersrow, Jack Blackburn, Bobby Dobbs, Dave Holly. We look at Joe Gans and Joe Walcott, the Barbados Demon, Steve Crosby, many of them. And then you turn your focus to the second wave of Black Murdersrow. Harry Smith, the Harlem Thunderbolt. Jack McVeigh, the Pride of Harlem. The Leaperville Shadow. George Godfrey. John Lester Johnson. Kid Norfolk and Lee Anderson. Obie Walker, Bearcat, Elmer Violet Ray. And then you turn your focus to the third wave of Black Murdersrow, predominantly middleweights and welterweights, with men such as Coco Kid and Holman Williams, Lloyd Marshall, and Charlie Burley. Little Tiger Aaron Wade, and the Black Dynamite, Eddie Booker. You had fighters such as Sergio Valdez, Black Bill, William Gorilla Jones, the Fighting Gorilla. But then you look at general round robins. Jack Britton, Ted Kid Lewis, 20 times. Look at Joe Jeanette and Sam McVeigh, 3 times in 1909 alone. Sam Langford and Harry Wells, 22 times. Sam Langford and Sam McVeigh, 15 times. Sam Langford and Jim Barry, 12 times. Sam Langford and Joe Jeanette, 14 times. Sam Langford and Jeff Clark, who was known as the Joplin Ghost, 11 times. Jack Johnson and Joe Jeanette, 7 times. We look at Joe Lynch and Jack Sharkey. They fought each other 6 times. Pancho Villa and Mike Ballerino from Philadelphia, 10 times. Benny Leonard and Johnny Dundee, the Scotch Wop, 8 times. Harry Greb and Faye Kaiser, 9 times. Harry Greb and Jeff Smith, the Bayonne Globetrotter, 7 times. Lou Tendler and Willie Jackson, 5 times. Look at Ezra Charles and Jersey Joe Walcott, 4 times. Freddie Miller and Petey Cerrone, 6 times. Archie Moore and Jimmy Bivens, 5 times. Henry Armstrong and Baby Arizmenzi, 6 times. And black fighters fought round robins with one another, but they never had a shot at a title opportunity. When you look at Ted Kid Lewis and Jack Britton, they fought for the title with one another several times. When you look at Archie Moore and Jimmy Bivens, they didn't have such luxury. Now, Archie Moore would take on Joey Maxim in 1952. He would get his shot, although he had to sign a contract stating that he would take on Joey Maxim 7 times, whether he won or lost. It was safe to have been able to keep it in the family when you look at Jack Kearns. Holman Williams would take on Coco Kid 14 times, and Charlie Burley would take on Holman Williams 7 times. Very interesting as you study the times. But yet these men didn't get an opportunity to fight for a world title. Now, yes, you would look at other times where you would see Emil Griffith and Benny Kid Paret, who would face each other 3 times. And Archie Moore and a fighter by the name of Johnson. Harold is his first name. They fought one another several times. But in the early years, you didn't get that opportunity. Coco Kid would take on Eddie Booker, who was known as Black Dynamite, March 9th, 1930. Coco Kid had a record of 105 wins, 30 losses, 5 draws, and 29 knockouts. Eddie Booker had a record of 37 wins, 1 loss, 4 draws, and 20 knockouts. Coco Kid would defeat Eddie Booker via 10 rounds on decision. The fight took place in New Haven, Connecticut. It was at the New Haven Arena. And at that time, Coco Kid had a record of 141 professional bouts when he took on Eddie Booker in 1939. Charlie Burley would take on Holman Williams December 1st, 1939. Burley had a record of 26 wins and 3 losses, no draws, and 15 knockouts. As for Holman Williams, he had a record of 64 wins, 7 losses, 4 draws, and 26 knockouts. Holman Williams was a winner, 15 rounds on points. Williams would earn the World Colored Welterweight Championship belt. Now, Charlie Burley became the colored welterweight champion when he would defeat Coco Kid in 1938. Coco Kid would pick up that title when he took on young Peter Jackson from the Pacific Coast in 1936. And the welterweight division was steaming up that year. And so the colored belt would be in existence. In 1938, as I mentioned in the other video, you had a black heavyweight champion, a black light heavyweight champion, a black welterweight champion, a black featherweight and lightweight champion, but didn't have a black middleweight champion. Not since William Gorilla Jones and then Ray Robinson. So the colored middleweight championship would now be introduced 1942. And what was interesting, 1939, Joe Louis would take on fighters such as Two-Ton Tony Galento, Henry Armstrong, would have 5 fights in the month of October defending his welterweight championship title. Joe Louis would defend his heavyweight championship title in 39. John Henry Lewis would lose one of his titles in 38 because he couldn't pass an eye examination test to take on his mandatory, which was Tiger Jack Fox. But in 39, he would relinquish his title in the month of January so he can take on the world heavyweight champion, Joe Louis. As featherweight, as lightweight, you didn't have a black champion. 1940, you had one. And he was a bantamweight. But in January 11th of 1940, Holman Williams would take on Coco Kid. Holman Williams weighed 147 pounds and Coco Kid weighed the same. The fight took place in Baltimore Coliseum in Maryland. And Holman Williams had a record of 65 wins and 7 losses, 5 draws with 26 knockouts. As for Coco Kid, he had a record of 115 wins, 32 losses, 6 draws, and 31 knockouts. Now, Coco Kid wound up becoming the winner via unanimous decision in 15 rounds. And he would become the new colored world welterweight champion. This is in 1940. Referee was Charlie Shorts. The judges were Ed Thomas and Ed Brockman. Jimmy Bivens and Charlie Burley would meet up September 3rd, 1940. And Bivens had a record of 14 wins, no losses, no draws, with 7 knockouts. Charlie Burley had a record of 31 wins, 4 losses, 1 draw, and 17 knockouts. Jimmy Bivens' hands would be raised. Unanimous decision. And this was the first year as a professional of Jimmy Bivens' career. I often say this was the greatest year for the great fighters during that time because they all turned professional. Ike Williams, Ray Robinson, Jimmy Bivens. I include Jake LaMotta and I include Bo Jack. Willie Pep. They all turned professional in 1940. Cleo Shane. Many of them would win titles. But the black fighter would begin to get his shot. December 22nd, 1941, Holman Williams would take on Coco Kid. Holman Williams had a record of 89 wins, 9 losses, 5 draws, 31 knockouts. As for Coco Kid, he had a record of 137 wins, 37 losses, 6 draws, and 38 knockouts. They would fight at the Baltimore Coliseum, and it would become a 10-round draw. It was Coco Kid's professional fight, 182 to be exact. And what was interesting, he would defeat Luther Slugger White, 15 rounds, unanimous decision. That would be 181st professional bout. He was a member of the Black Murdersrow. April 29, 1940, he would defeat Chalky Wright, 10 rounds. In Baltimore, Maryland. It would be his 158th professional bout. July 1st, 1940. He would win the USA, New England's welterweight championship crown from Frankie Britt. 7th round knockout. Donovan Field, West Haven, Connecticut. That would be his 161st professional bout. I'm speaking of Coco Kid at this moment. He lost to Georgie Abrams and Izzy Genazzo, August 12th and October 14th of 1940. Defeated Jimmy Leto and Phil Furr, both 10 rounds decisions. Coco Kid was very busy. I have him ranked, as I once said, the greatest Puerto Rican fighter when you look at the details in all of boxing. And the 3rd greatest Black Murdersrow fighter. of them all. Holman Williams would take on Coco Kid January 19th, 1942. As I stated, they fought 14 times. Coco Kid would defeat him 9 times. Holman Williams had a record of 90 wins, 9 losses, 6 draws, and 31 knockouts. Coco Kid had a record of 138 wins, 37 losses, 7 draws, and 39 knockouts. Baltimore Coliseum in Maryland is where they had this fight, and Coco Kid would defeat him. It was his 184th professional fight. January 14th, 1942, Coco Kid would win the vacant Connecticut welterweight championship crown from Eddie Delon. It was at the New Haven, Connecticut arena. That would be his 183rd professional bout. A remarkable career of Coco Kid. Now, February 26, 1942, Holman Williams would take on Charlie Burley. Holman Williams had a record of 91 wins, 9 losses, 6 draws, and 31 knockouts. As for Coco Kid, he had a record of 45 wins, 5 losses, 1 draw, and 27 knockouts. Charlie Burley's hand would be raised in a unanimous decision. Holman Williams and Coco Kid would meet once again March 2nd, 1942. Holman Williams would have a record of 91 wins, 10 losses, 6 draws, and 31 knockouts. As for Coco Kid, he had a record of 139 wins, 38 losses, 7 draws, and 39 knockouts. Now, Coco Kid would win his 8th bout via 15-round unanimous decision, 186th professional bout. That was the 8th bout between Coco Kid and Holman Williams. So imagine if we said the 8th bout between Terrence Crawford and Earl Spence, or the 8th bout between Jermell Charlo and Demetrius Andrade. That's what it would look like. That's what it would sound like when you spoke about it 20 years from now. Now, Charlie Burley would take on Holman Williams August 14th, 1942. Charlie Burley had a record of 52 wins, 7 losses, 1 draw, and 32 knockouts. Holman Williams had a record of 96 wins, 13 losses, 6 draws, and 32 knockouts. Charlie Burley would TKO Holman Williams in 9 rounds. Eddie Booker would take on Lloyd Marshall September 28th, 1942. Eddie Booker had a record of 59 wins, 3 losses, and 7 draws with 30 knockouts. As for Lloyd Marshall, he had a record of 33 wins, 6 losses, and 2 draws with 20 knockouts. Eddie Booker would defeat Lloyd Marshall. Lloyd Marshall was an outstanding light heavyweight. Eddie Booker could fight neither way. And he was a devastating puncher. Cracked the ribs of Archie Moore. His name was the Black Dynamite. And he was a hell of a fighter. Now, Charlie Burley and Holman Williams would keep a busy schedule. They would fight one another October 16th, 1942. Charlie Burley had a record of 53 wins, 7 losses, 1 draw, and 33 knockouts. As for Holman Williams, he had a record of 96 wins, 14 losses, 6 draws, and 32 knockouts. Holman Williams would get his title back, unanimous decision, in defeating Charlie Burley. Lloyd Marshall would take on Charlie Burley December 11th, 1942. Lloyd Marshall had a record of 34 wins, 7 losses, 2 draws, and 21 knockouts. As for Charlie Burley, he had a record of 54 wins, 8 losses, 1 draw, 34 knockouts. Lloyd Marshall would defeat Charlie Burley. As we take a look at Eddie Booker and Jack Chase, they would face one another January 11th, 1943. He had a record of 60 wins, 3 losses, 8 draws, 30 knockouts. I'm speaking of Eddie Booker. Now, Jack Chase had a record of 50 wins, 5 losses, 4 draws, and 22 knockouts. Jack Chase would defeat Eddie Booker. Jack Chase would become the California middleweight and then the California light heavyweight when he would take on Watson Jones, champion. And that was a remarkable feat in the case of what Jack Chase has gone through in his career and in his life. Eddie Booker and Jack Chase would mix it up several times, in and out of the ring. You look at Holman Williams, who would take on Coco Kid January 15th, 1943. Holman Williams had a record of 98 wins, 14 losses, 6 draws, and 32 knockouts. Now, what was interesting about Coco Kid, he reached the 150th win mark. 39 losses, 7 draws, and 41 knockouts. Coco Kid would be the winner. 12 rounds on points at the Victory Arena in New Orleans. He won the World Colored Middleweight Championship title. And what was interesting about that victory? Coco Kid would be the last colored middleweight champion, but he would be the first colored welterweight champion in 1936 when he would take on young Peter Jackson. And that would be his 198th professional bout. Coco Kid was a milestone. February 19th, 1943, Jack Chase would take on Charlie Burley. Jack Chase had a record of 52 wins, 5 losses, 5 draws, and 23 knockouts. As for Charlie Burley, he had a record of 55 wins, 9 losses, 1 draw, and 35 knockouts. Now, Charlie Burley would defeat Jack Chase, and he would now become the California light heavyweight champion. Little Tiger Aaron Wade would take on Charlie Burley, March 13th, 1943. Aaron Wade had a record of 50 wins, 5 losses, 5 draws, and 22 knockouts. Charlie Burley had a record of 56 wins, 9 losses, and 35 knockouts. Charlie Burley would defeat Little Tiger Aaron Wade. Now, April 19th, 1943, Coco Kid would take on Charlie Burley. That would be their second bout between the two of them. Coco Kid had a record of 152 wins, 40 losses, 7 draws, and 41 knockouts. As for Charlie Burley, he had a record of 57 wins, 9 losses, 1 draw, and 35 knockouts. So with a 10-round draw at the Pelican Stadium in New Orleans, Louisiana, May 3rd, 1943, he won against Deacon Johnny Brown. Johnny Brown used to walk around the gymnasium with a Bible, as did the Georgia Deacon, Flowers, Tiger Flowers, would do the same thing. Now, May 14th, 1943, Johnny Holman and Charlie Burley would meet for the 6th time. Holman Williams had a record of 104 wins, 15 losses, 6 draws, and 32 knockouts. Charlie Burley had a record of 57 wins, 9 losses, 2 draws, and 35 knockouts. The referee had called about a no contest, 1 minute in the 10th round. First it was a draw, then he would reverse it because they were not going to pay these fighters. Because it was a lackluster bout. These two men were moving up in age. They fought each other so many times, and I already read to you in conversation the amount of fights they had with one another. And if you notice, there were not a lot of knockouts between these two men. Archie Moore had the most knockouts within the Black Murdersrow regime. 7 knockouts. He was very crafty. Middleweight. Then he would move up to the light heavyweight. 1944 along with Eddie Charles, because these men knew they couldn't get a title shot in the middleweight division with Tony Zale. Tony Zale ducked the entire Black Murdersrow fraternity. Jimmy Bivens would take on Lloyd Marshall June 8, 1943. Jimmy Bivens had a record of 36 wins, 5 losses, and 11 knockouts. As for Lloyd Marshall, he had a record of 40 wins, 7 losses, 2 draws, and 24 knockouts. 13-round knockout, Bivens wins and defeats Lloyd Marshall. And the fraternity was shocked. But Jimmy Bivens, as he is known as a very underrated fighter in today's discussion. He was not underrated then. Everyone knew who Jimmy Bivens was. He was an outstanding fighter. Unfortunately, found in an attic. Underweight. But Jimmy Bivens understood the game of boxing. Like I said, he turned professional along with Ray Robinson, Ike Williams, and a fighter by the name of Cleo Shane. And when you look at Willie Pep and Jake LaMotta and Bo Jack, all these men would make their presence known in 1940. Bivens, when he fought Archie Moore, and you look at that fight film, and you look at the skill set, things he was doing to make Archie Moore move certain ways that Archie Moore perhaps wouldn't have planned to move. That shows you the talent of Jimmy Bivens. Little Tiger Aaron Wade and Jack Chase, June 21st, 1943. Little Tiger Aaron Wade had a record of 54 wins, 7 losses, 6 draws, and 25 knockouts. Jack Chase, 51 wins, 6 draws, and 23 knockouts. Wade would win on points. Now, September 13th, 1943, Holman Williams would take on Lloyd Marshall. Holman Williams had a record at this point in time in his career of 104 wins, 17 losses, 6 draws, and 32 knockouts. Lloyd Marshall in his career had 42 wins, 8 losses, 2 draws, and 25 knockouts. He was a winner via the decision. Jack Chase and Lloyd Marshall, November 8th, 1943. Jack Chase had a record of 61 wins, 7 losses, 6 draws, and 26 knockouts. Lloyd Marshall had a record of 42 wins, 9 draws, 2 losses, and 25 knockouts. 9 losses and 2 draws with 25 knockouts. 42 wins of Lloyd Marshall. It turned out to be a draw. And that was very interesting when you look back at their careers. Now, November 19th, 1943. Holman Williams and Eddie Booker would meet one another. And Holman Williams had a record of 107 wins, 17 losses, 6 draws, and 32 knockouts. Eddie Booker had a record of 62 wins, 4 losses, 8 draws, and 32 knockouts. I want to go back to 1940 and remind you that Henry Armstrong had taken on Fitzy Zivic and he would lose his title October 4th, 1940. And that would be the same day that Ray Robinson would make his professional debut. But 1940, I had told you that Charlie Burley was really ranked number 2, number 3. Zivic was ranked number 1 at this point because Henry Armstrong had already dethroned Severino Garcia in 1938. 1938, Charlie Burley would defeat Coco Kid for the colored welterweight championship title. But Charlie Burley would also lose 1 of 3 fights to Fitzy Zivic. This replaced Fitzy Zivic in line was shot at Henry Armstrong. Henry Armstrong would wind up fighting another fighter from England. And his name was Ernie Rudrick. Charlie Burley was in line. Didn't get the opportunity. And he was in the mix with these black Murdersrow fighters. Lloyd Marshall and Jack Chase, December 13th, 1943. Lloyd Marshall had a record of 43 wins, 9 losses, 3 draws, and 26 knockouts. Jack Chase had a record of 61 wins, 8 losses, and 26 knockouts. Jack Chase would defeat Lloyd Marshall. And what was interesting about Lloyd Marshall, he would take on Freddie Mills. The knockout that he would perform against Freddie Mills was a thing of beauty. And Freddie Mills would defeat Anton Christopheridis for the light heavyweight championship title. He would lose his title to Joey Maxim. And Archie Moore would defeat Joey Maxim for the light heavyweight championship crown in 52. Izzy Charles would take on Joey Maxim as well. They fought several times. Charles never got a title shot. And we look at February 17th, 1944. Jack Chase would take on Holman Williams. Chase had a record of 62 wins, 9 losses, 7 draws, and 26 knockouts. Holman Williams had a record of 111 wins, 17 losses, 6 draws, and 32 knockouts. Holman Williams would defeat Jack Chase. Holman Williams would take on Jack Chase once again February 21st, 1944. At this point in time in Holman Williams' career, he had a record of 112 wins, 17 losses, 6 draws, and 32 knockouts. Jack Chase, at this point of his career, had a record of 62 wins, 10 losses, 7 draws, and 26 knockouts. Holman Williams would once again defeat Jack Chase. Now, March 6, 1944, Holman Williams would take on Eddie Booker for the 3rd time. Holman Williams had a record of 113 wins, 17 losses, 6 draws, and 32 knockouts. Eddie Booker, who was the Black Dynamite, had a record of 65 wins, 5 losses, 8 draws, and 34 knockouts. Like I said, Eddie Booker was a dynamite puncher. Little Tiger Aaron Wade would take on Charlie Burley for the 2nd time. March 24th, 1944, Aaron Wade had a record of 58 wins, 7 losses, 5 draws, and 29 knockouts. Charlie Burley had a record of 59 wins, 9 losses, 2 draws, and 36 knockouts. Charlie Burley would defeat Little Tiger Aaron Wade via decision. Now, April 26, 1944, Jack Chase would take on Charlie Burley. Jack Chase had a record of 64 wins, 11 losses, 7 draws, and 27 knockouts. Charlie Burley will have a record of 60 wins, 9 losses, 2 draws, and 36 knockouts. What a fight that was. Jack Chase would take on Homer Williams for the 4th time, May 24th, 1944. Jack Chase would have a record of 64 wins, 13 losses, 7 draws, and 27 knockouts. Homer Williams would have a record of 117 wins, 18 losses, 6 draws, and 32 knockouts. My God, what wars these guys would have. We'll have to do a part 4 of the round robin of Black Murdersrow. But let me just tell you something. When you look at fighters and opportunities either they had or didn't have in their career, the results were always the same. Either you were going to win or you were going to lose. The unfortunate thing with the Black Murdersrow is the fact that they were called the Black Murdersrow. That they had to been given some situation of dignity for themselves because they were never given a fair shot or an opportunity to make money for their family or to create legacy in a world of fisticuffs. When you have fighters such as Anton Christopheridis and Tony Zale, and you had a fighter by the name of Freddie Red Cochrane. I just wanted to briefly show you Freddie Red Cochrane. He didn't give Ray Robinson an opportunity. He defeated Fritzy Zivik, but he never gave Ray Robinson an opportunity. Unbelievable. See you on the next video. Thanks for watching. I'm Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. All great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. Peace.